Greetings gamers, my name is Anto. Welcome to the first stream of 2026. I nearly said 2023. That would not be right at all. I need to mute myself because I can hear myself in my ears and that's really distracting. But it does mean I know that the sound is working, so that's a good thing. Welcome. It's been a while. It's been, oh my god, it's been a long time since I've streamed. I've been wanting to stream regularly for ages, but health has kept me from doing it, and I'm hoping to be able to start doing it again much more frequently, start doing more world building streams and more of all of that good stuff. This evening we're going to be doing a bunch of prep work for like YouTube behind the scenes stuff. It is balls cold today, hence the jumper and the hat, and I have a blanket around me as well because I am freezing cold. So at various points during the night I might add more layers to try and deal with this freezing temperature. But like I said, what we're going to be doing to start with this evening, depends on how long it takes, is, given that it is the new year, I want to dive in and look at some of my content plans for 2026, look at some of the video ideas that I've got for both regular channel videos, members only content, and video streams. And I like doing this in the stream format I did it last year because it's a good chance for back and forth with you folks in the chat, for you to give first impressions on video ideas and to throw out suggestions for video topics as well, so that I can add them to the list. So we're going to go ahead. I'm going to dive into the desktop view. It's almost like I've completely forgotten how to do this. So here we are in a spreadsheet, and this is my scheduling spreadsheet for the year, very similar to how I had it set up last year. You can see that I've got the dates, the months, and the week of the year, and the dates down on the left here. And then we have a bunch of columns. We've got regular channel content in this kind of big bracket with what options, what video ideas we have in one column, and then notes for whether they have been scripted, filmed, or edited yet. Notes for who the sponsors are for those videos. I've deleted a lot of that information so that I'm not kind of like outing anyone for some of those things. And then we've got a column for members only content, content for live streams, content for Kickstarter work. There's a couple of Kickstarters that I want to do this year. One of them is going to be the revised version of my class cheat sheets, which I'll talk a little bit more about later. And then some other work, like things that I want to be doing in the background as I go through the year. You can see that I've already noted some of that down with doing a GM Bible for Notion and for Obsidian. One of the big things that I want to focus on this year is more usable content through videos. So we're going to be doing a lot of like software videos, a lot of looking at new apps and revisiting some of the older apps that I've done videos on in the past. So some of the map making tools that I've used in the past, some of the campaign planning tools that I've used in the past, all that kind of good stuff. Revisiting those to give more content on them, to be like, hey, here's even more useful stuff. So you can see that in the upcoming weeks, I'm aiming for kind of fortnightly videos at the minute, just because the weekly videos is too much. But we have last week's kind of designing with purpose video, which is all about setting design goals and parameters when you're starting a new TTRPG product or project, either be it homebrew or for publishing or print. And that's got a bunch of really useful kind of like high level design work information in it. So that's already been put out, so that's all green. And then the next video that is going to be coming out is going to be a video looking at the epic encounter boxes from Steamforged Games. These boxes that have got a bunch of minis and an adventure package together with like a fold out map and stuff, and are designed to be like a full complete adventure in a box. I got sent a couple of those, so I've put together a review of those. That's all done. I'm ready to go out. And then from there, it's a bunch of new and returning content for apps and software and tools. So we've got more Legend Keeper content coming throughout the year, new stuff for Affinity, so going back to the publishing with Affinity kind of series of videos now that the new version of Affinity is out. So last October, I think it was, they put out a brand new version of Affinity that has bundled both publisher, designer and photo into one unified Affinity app, and that has become completely free. So I'm going to be doing a new video where I go over kind of the main changes of that app and how to set that up to use it for layout to carry on with that series. And then further on in the year, I want to talk about setting up textiles, doing cross-referencing, how to do stat blocks and breakdown boxes, and kind of more layout focused stuff within Affinity. I'm also going to be asking folks what they want to see from that Affinity series, because it's one that never gets a lot of views on its initial release, but it's kind of a slow burn series where you get a lot of people commenting being like, when is the next one? I want more of it. So I want to know what specific things people want to see from that. And then I want to retouch Dungeon Alchemist, the map making software that I did a video on. It might even be like 2 years ago now. I don't think it was last year. But that has had tons of updates since I first looked at it. So I want to go back and do another look at that and see whether it still would be my sort of go-to for if I want to generate a map for myself really quickly. If I wanted something, if I was making a map and I just needed something like a tavern or something like that real fast, whether that's still going to be my go-to. And then as you can see, we've got a bunch of other kind of apps and resourcey based ones throughout the year. So as we're going through this portion of the stream, if there are things that you want to see covered in videos in the future, let me know in the chat. Some of them will or may end up in the regular channel content. Some of them may end up as members only videos. Some of them may end up as live streams, because that's one of the things that I am doing more of now, is like being very particular with where I put the videos, because some videos just do not do well as, or some topics just do not do well as a regular video. So if we look into the members only content, a lot of the members only content is real deep dive, specific, nitty gritty, niche world building stuff that is super useful and valuable if you are really into world building. But it's very, very hard to package for a mass market audience, and it's hard to get a lot of eyeballs on. So I think one of a good example of that is this video that I'm going to be making in the nearest future about fallen empires. So fallen empires and fallen civilizations are something that I find fascinating, and they're a staple of fantasy storytelling and D&D and fantasy role-playing games in general. And I've had a couple of people specifically request videos talking about fallen empires in the past, and I have in my setting a fallen empire that crops up and interacts with the world in a lot of really interesting ways that I think that in that video I'll be able to relate and use for examples. But that's the kind of video that is really difficult to package in a way that like the main YouTube algorithm likes, so it makes it perfect members content. So that's why it's in that bucket versus normal content. And the same with live streams. Sometimes it'll be a case of I'll have an idea for a video that's like, well, this is either something that I don't know whether there's enough there to make it a full video, or it could be that I am not sure whether there's enough interest even for it to be a members only video, or I'm not quite sure on the topic. That's the kind of situation where using it for a live stream topic can be perfect, because when we're live we can change track really quickly. Like if something isn't working, it's really easy to change topic. During the live, it's no problem, and you don't have to like invest the time in scripting and editing and all of that good stuff, which makes it much easier to kind of produce. So as we go through and look at the year, you can see that I've got a bunch of ideas for content that takes us through to kind of September for main channel videos. Most of it is very kind of app and software focused. So it's Affinity, it's Legend Keeper, it's map making stuff, it's new options for map makers and all of that kind of stuff. Immediately I think that this particular video on when to switch to 5e I probably either won't make or won't make as a regular channel video, because I think the kind of landscape of my regular channel videos has changed, and I don't think that that is the kind of video that I want to be making as a regular channel video. But I think that is now the perfect time to switch to 5e24. That kind of premise would be ideal for a kind of discussion-y live stream. So sometime in the summer would be my ideal pick for that, because then we'd be like 2 years-ish out from the introduction of the 2024 rules, and at that point I want to revisit and be like, is now the time to jump ship? If you've finished up your previous campaigns, if you've been waiting, is now the time to jump into this new system or this updated system if you haven't already and you are currently a 2014 player. So I think we're going to move that into sort of June time for a live stream. And you can see how I've got a link to a D&D Beyond article that they talk about updating to the 2024 rules, because they make some assumptions about why you might want to change, and they have some things to say that I want to reference when I'm talking about it, to be like, are these things true? Is this how I feel about making the switch? Is this how people in general feel? And that kind of stuff. Other things that we have, I'm going to take my hat off because my head has gone very warm. Other things that we've got going on here is in the members only content. In the next week or two, I'm going to be recording like a Dual Cities of Talavar tour. So if we jump over to, has that taken us to the right place? Yes, it has. So if we jump over to my Legend Keeper page and the Dual Cities of Talavar, I've in the past given kind of brief overviews of the setting of the Dual Cities in videos, but I want to make a members only video where I go through each of the specific nations in the Dual Cities and kind of give more of a deep dive as to what they're about, where they are, kind of some of their history, and kind of cap off the little like mini series that I've been doing in the members only videos that started with a kind of tour of the planes of existence. So we started real high up with like, here are the gods and the planes of existence, and then we went and did a tour of the planet of Ishtar, where we talked about kind of the wider world that my campaigns take place in. And then I want to cap it off by going into the Dual Cities and giving more of an in-depth tour of that region. And I think that'll round that set of members only videos off really nicely. Then I've got a bunch of videos on how specific tropes and stereotypes impact my world. So I have one that's going to be broadly talking about how to make world building your own. So I want to touch on things like demons and dragons, and making the things that appear in every campaign feel unique to your campaign. So almost every D&D is going to have demons in it. What do I do to make demons in my campaign feel unique to my campaign? Almost every campaign is going to have dragons in them. What am I doing to make the dragons of Ishtar feel like they're rooted in that world and belong to that world and are more than just like generic flying lizards? And I'm excited to dive into that for that video, because I think that there'll be a lot of useful advice in there. Then we've got that video on Fallen Empires, and then another one that's specific to dragons, because I've been doing a lot of work on dragons for the current campaign that I'm running, and I have a lot of thoughts on specific dragons, and I want to talk about that in a video. And then a bunch of player focused ones, so talking about either running 4 players, so how to recruit players and how to run campaigns for players, how to get them involved and invested and get them to take risks, that kind of stuff. And also how to be a better player, so not just like how to play your character better, but how to be a player that people want at the table, and that kind of vibe. And then in terms of streams, we're doing planning stream this evening, and then Sunday, hopefully, if I have the spoons for it, this coming Sunday, I want to do a campaign prep stream, because there's some campaign stuff that I need to prep, as my players are just about to change location, and I need to prep some of the next location that they're going to. And then there's a little bit of high level kind of world building stuff for the wider meta of the world that I want to do in terms of the void. So this is something that I've been doing on Patreon for a little while that I want to make a stream on, because there's a lot of cool things there that tie into dragons and a bunch of the creatures that I have made for SIDEQUEST and other publications over the last couple of years that I think will be fun to talk about on stream. And then I think we'll spend probably a month streaming stuff for Project Cobalt, which is the working title for my sci-fi game, because it's been a while since I've taken a look at that and I want to dive back into that. In terms of other things that I want to add to content coming up this year, I know I want to make sure that I'm getting a decent amount of the Affinity videos coming out this year. So we've got setting up the new Affinity, the new version of Affinity. We're going to have a video on setting text styles, which is probably the thing that saves the most time, provided you do it right and do it at the start of a project, because if you don't, everything is just so much harder. And that's going to be a big part of that video, is talking through why everything is harder if you don't do this right, first of all. And then I want a video on stat blocks and breakout boxes and interacting with the flow of body text. And I'll probably put that probably needs to live earlier than cross-referencing does. And then cross-referencing can go later in the year, because cross-referencing is much more of an accessibility thing. And then at some point I also want to do a general accessibility, that's not how you spell it, a general accessibility video talking about things like color choice, contrast, the web aim, and all of that kind of stuff, and making products that are as accessible as possible. don't think off the top of my head I have any other immediate ideas for new content to put out, to add to this list. So if anyone has any questions about upcoming videos, anything like that, throw them in the chat. Hey, it's Bob. Hey Bob, how's it going? Stream seems to be flashing back to the Jewel Cities momentarily and then back to the table. Let's have a looky loo. Let me see. It could be that it's just not enjoying doing Excel at all. I think that this is an issue that we've had in the past, now that I think about it, with it specifically because of Excel. The OBS just does not like Excel. But that's not a problem. We can I'll stick my face up here for a moment and I can open it up in Google Sheets, and that should, fingers crossed, solve the problem. I'm about to say that's all kinds of wrong, but it's not. I'm just looking at the wrong thing. Right, let's see whether this works. Right, there we go. That should no longer flicker because it's in Google Sheets and not Excel. I should have remembered that. Cool. So, none of the things that I've done have changed. Let's refresh that and see if that fixes it. No, that's fine. Broadly done with this anyway, I think. There we go, it's up to date. All part of the groove of getting back into it. It's all fine. So, I'm pretty sure that I'm going to leave that open so we can add to it as the night goes, because I'm sure I will have ideas as we go, and instead jump over into Legend Keeper to do some session prep stuff, because like I said, my players are about to go to a new location, which means that I have a whole bunch of work that I need to do to prep for the next location and get that all ready for them. So my players are currently, if we zoom in here, my players are currently in the city of Visoka, which is up in the reach area of the Desk Empire. You can see that since Legend Keeper got the maps update, that I've added the regions, so I can click on them to get the information about them now. But if we go in and click on Visoka, this is where the players currently are, one of the cities in the northern reaches of the Desk Empire, this imperial landscape. But as one of the northern cities, this is kind of a little bit more removed from imperial control, so they don't have quite so much like imperial presence breathing down their neck. They've been here now for several months of real game time. We're like 16, 17 sessions in. And they've done a little bit of like underground criminal work with some gangs. They've done some arena contests where they have been earning notoriety in the city. And in their most recent kind of arc of the campaign, they have just been introduced to a mind flayer plot beneath the city. They'd heard rumors of people being abducted and kidnapped, and they'd seen this happening in the background for quite a while now whenever they've gone to the job boards, and I've described like, oh, here's a monster hunting job, or here's whatever the job is. I've always made sure to describe missing persons posters among the things that they've seen on the job board, so the characters have known about this for quite a while now, and it's all come to a head. The players delved into the Undercity beneath Visoka when searching for some of these missing people, and came across where all of these people had been taken into like a labyrinth of kind of incubation pods where they were waiting to be turned into mind flayers. They manage to fight a Mind Flayer scout down there, defeat it, bring it back up to the surface, tell the guards, the local guards, like, hey, there's Mind Flayers down there. So a big posse was rounded up. They all descended down into the Undercity, and then they felt this like earthquake and psionic vibration, and suddenly all the people in these incubation chambers started to wake up, kind of half tentacle faced, and attack the people in the tunnels. And there was a desperate scrambling fight within the tunnels. The players managed to survive and get away, but a bunch of these freshly turned Mind Flayers also managed to escape. So the players' next steps in the campaign are to learn more about Mind Flayers and start working out how to stop them. So they have surmised that there is some kind of elder brain operating within the city or nearby to the city, and they have been speaking to some of the local like knowledgeable people. So they've gone to the leader of the city, the local legate, who's like the mayor, the imperial mayor, and asked for support. And the legate has said, yeah, sure, I will give you support, but I don't want to sacrifice my political position because I've got political opponents waiting to stab me in the back. If you eliminate these political opponents, I can give you my full support, that kind of thing. So that's one option that they've got. And then they've gone to speak to the Mages Guild and spoken to one of the mages there to learn more about the background of the Mind Flayers, and been given a bunch of information on Mind Flayer information, and been told, kind of given a lead in a different city for where they can learn even more about that, which is the next thing that they're going to pursue. And then they went to speak to their kind of criminal enterprise contact, the Crow King, the leader of the gang that they're loosely affiliated with, and wanted to try and map out the Undercity. So they were directed to the mayor of the Undercity, and they said, yeah, sure, I can get you a map, but you need to deal with this monster problem that I'm having in the bowels of the Undercity. And that is what we're going to be doing in the next session. They're going to be going and fighting this monster so they can get a map of the Undercity, and then they'll be leaving town to go to a new location to dive into kind of more of the lore of Mind Flayers and get more information. So what I need to do is prep this next location that they're going to. Joshua Lee says, as long as they've been busy, I'm working on a new world for my home game since we're on our post-campaign break. I'm personally burned out on Mind Flayers right now after finally finishing Baldur's Gate 3. Baldur's Gate 3 is so good. I'm surprised my players specifically wanted Mind Flayer content. So before the campaign started, I always poll the players and ask, what kind of stuff do you want to see? What monsters do you want to interact with? All of that kind of stuff. And they specifically requested Mind Flayers. They've encountered Mind Flayers in our campaign before. This is the same group that I've been playing with now for a decade. And in multiple previous campaigns, they've encountered Mind Flayers, but never in a serious way, because anytime they come across Mind Flayers, they just run. So they wanted to finally fully encounter them. And I was like, cool, yeah, that's fine. That can go on the list of things that you can encounter. And then all of them made dumb as bricks characters. Literally every single one of them made a character with an intelligence of 8. And I was like, you said you wanted to interact with Mind Flayers. You said Mind Flayers, and then you all made absolute idiots for your characters. It's perfect. It's perfect. So they are having to deal with the Mind Flayer threat as complete idiots, which has been an interesting challenge to deal with. So once they're done cleaning up the monster in the Undercity, they're going to go and fight a Gorgon, so they can get a map of the Undercity. Once they're done with that, they'll be going to the city of Lastwatch, which is the most remote of the Imperial cities. It is the city furthest from the heart of Imperial control, and they've heard rumors that in that city there is a piece of crashed skyship. So 1,000+ years ago in the past, there was a race of people called the Akamiri, and they were like super technologically advanced. They are the only reason that the mind flayers and beholders and all of these like super nasties don't rule the cosmos, is because these people, the Akamiri, rose to power and kind of became the supreme creatures of the world. And then overnight, for reasons that no one knows, their entire empire crumbled, their cities fell from the sky, and their people as a whole just like blinked out of existence. But they have heard rumors that there is a piece of one of their sky cities in the city of Lastwatch. So they are planning on traveling to the city to find the piece of crashed skyship so they can delve into it and find more information about both the Akamiri and the Mind Flayers. Now, 2 of the 3 players that are currently in the party are very interested in Akamiri stuff, so they want to pursue that because they want the lore, but they also want to see whether they can find something akin to a psionic detector within that ship. That's the main reason they're going there. They're going there to see whether there are any tools on board this crashed skyship that would allow them to narrow their search for the Mind Flayer and the Elder Brain within Visoka. So they're hoping to get the map of the Ender City and then something like a water diviner, a psionic water diviner that'll help point them in the right direction. Low intelligence party, then Mind Flayer is going to be in good. Yeah, like every time the players come close to interacting with an intellect devourer, I'm like, oof, this could be it. It could be game over. I love low intelligence parties. I've been in a party where the barbarian was the most intelligent. The barbarian being the most intelligent is impressive. I'm going to introduce my players to a doomed world. It's a world the Overgod just created, locked up the other gods, the most powerful of the demon lords, like it was a million years ago. Or maybe Slad. I really like Slad. I used Slad in a couple campaigns back. We had a whole Slad act, and having the Slad tadpoles, that infected element of them, was a lot of fun. So this is a map of the city of Lastwatch, like most of the city maps that I use in the Dual Cities. This is taken from the Explore page on Incarnate. So I go on to Incarnate, I go to the Explore page, and I just search by the city map type, and then find one that I like the look of, that is suitable for the type of environment that I'm going for. Download and clone it, and then make some small changes. I find it a much easier way to get a lot of city maps, just because I like the option of the players being able to go anywhere. And Lord knows I don't want to make maps this detailed myself all the damn time. So the Incarnate Explore page is excellent for that. And this one fits Lastwatch really well because it's got that vibe of being like right on the edge of the continent, and it matches the mountain range pretty well. So this one fit pretty well, and it already had kind of this large imposing building that would work for this astronomy style building that already existed in the city. So the city itself is the most remote of the Dusk Empire cities, which means that it is the city that has the least imperial influence, and that has a couple of knock-on effects. So if we go and click on Highcliffe Manor, this is where the legate Arthur Highcliffe lives, and he is the leader of the city. You can see that he's built himself like a compound, and then has a courthouse and a doctor and some services built within this compound that he lives kind of separate to the rest of the city. And his whole vibe is that in his mind, he's playing the Empire. He's like, right, I'm so far away from the heart of imperial control that I can basically do what I want. And I can allow law breaking to happen here. I can allow rebel groups to kind of have a foothold here. And I can take under the table payments, and it's all fine. As long as, you know, my wheels are being greased. I'm so far away from imperial control that that's not going to matter. In reality, what is happening is there's actually kind of imperial spies in the city who watch him and report back, and there's only as much freedom in the city as like the empire allows. So there's a lot of use to having a free city in quite a controlled empire. So the empire knows that if someone wants to flee the empire, they're going to go to Last Watch. So if it's someone that they don't really care about, if it's someone that they can afford to have them flee, they don't need to worry about it, just let them go. But if it is someone that they desperately need to catch in that net, then they have people positioned in that supposedly lax city that can be notified and kind of grab those people before they're able to flee. And one of those is there's an office of the Imperial Security Overwatch, which is the kind of secret police of the Empire. They have an office within the city, and then in the dockyards, which is built underneath the mountains, they have people that work there that kind of watch the boats, so if people are trying to escape. So that's kind of the backdrop that we find ourselves in this city. The players will be going to, they will expect it to be a much more relaxed environment, much less Imperial presence. The Imperial presence is just behind the veil, so to speak. Bob says I do the same for cities. Bad at creating cities on Incarnate, though at least one of my cities I need to do myself. Yeah, it's creating good cities just takes so much time. Especially if you need something really specific. But if you don't want something like super detailed, Watabu is amazing for it. A lot of the cities I've used in the past, or if I can't find something suitable on Incarnate, a lot of the times I will hit random on Watabu a couple times. And that is one of the things that I do plan on making a video on this year. Have I got it on my list? No, I thought I had. Good shout. So that video right there, that one that says map making, that can be Watabu, because I do plan on making another video. I've talked about Watabu in videos in the past, but I'm long overdue to be like, here's a bunch of videos on Watabu. Here's how to use just most of the different tools that they have on that site, because it's incredible. And I don't think I'd put it on the list of upcoming videos. That's what I've just written. Yeah, so it's on there. Cool. So in Last Watch, they're going to be going and heading for Sullivan's relics. So they've heard that this piece of crashed Akmiri skyship is being kept in an auction house / like relic hunters repository for this guy called Asher Sullivan. And he is a character that was connected to one of our previous player characters' backstories from our last TPK. So this is a plotline the players would have eventually interacted with in another life anyway, and now they're just a different set of characters is going to interact with it. And normally when characters die, any plot threads that they had hanging there, I will usually just abandon to the four winds. But because I know that at least 2/3 of the party are actively interested in kind of the lore element of the Akmiri, and that they'd gone to seek out someone who could give them more information on mind flayers, and that there was that connection, it made sense to me to be like, well, yeah, there is this thing, and it does already exist. It is already really close. I may as well point you there. So it would be bittersweet for them to be like, oh, this is a plot thread that we would have been on if we hadn't have died in like with our previous characters, but at least I'll get to kind of see that through, which will be nice and bittersweet. So Sullivan's Relics is an auction house, a kind of realm of curios that is run by this guy Asher Sullivan, and it has the piece of crashed Akmiri skyship. And when they get to town, or when they get to the city, I have no idea how they're going to get there yet, whether they're going to walk, whether they're going to come by boat, how they're going to do it. So when they get there, it'll be up to them to figure out how to go about finding this information. But I've made sure to go in and start giving myself some options for, there's always the chance that they'll decide to stay here. There's always the chance that they'll come in, get what they need and just leave, but maybe return. So a lot of the kind of prep approach that I take for something like this is, what is the minimum amount of prep that I can do, but also how many like juicy plot seeds can I plant? They're not plot threads, they're plot coupons. Exactly. You collect them and cash them in to see things happen. Exactly. So a lot of this has been thinking about the city and its relationships to the Empire. Welcome in, Raf. Evening. And planting ideas for how the players can interact with this city in interesting ways if they decide to spend more than 5 minutes here. So I know what their main goal is here, but I want enough texture to the city so that if they arrive and they ask, some of the locals, hey, what's the deal with this place? Where can we go in this place? And that kind of stuff, that there is enough here to latch onto. So starting left to right, there's this area that otherwise doesn't have a lot of interesting kind of landmarks in the map. That's where I have put a lot of my generic shop locations. So the way that I do this is if we scroll and close that up, where is my generic locations? Right top. So on the left here, in my World of Ishtar element on Legend Keeper, I have a bunch of pages for generic locations, which I will drag onto a map, which creates these golden pins. The gold says to me, this is a generic location. So for example, a generic tattoo parlor. And inside each of these locations will be an amount of information depending on what the place is. So if we click on a tavern, for example, you can see I've got a bunch of collapsible bits of information for the various taverns that they've been to throughout the world. So when they go to a new place, I will create a new expandable element for it. So in Visoka, we have the Maelstrom. That is one of the taverns that they've been to. Some information on it, some information on a couple of the NPCs in there. And that's how I currently approach generic locations. So I don't need to make a new tavern pin and location every single time. I can make it once and drag it quickly onto the map so that when I'm doing my high level kind of start of the process world building for a location, I can fill it in really, really quickly and get an idea of, right, okay, there is a market bazaar here, there's a tavern right next to it and a restaurant, and start to understand the relationship in terms of space of where all of these things are compared to each other, which is one of my preferred ways to world build, especially in Legend Keeper, because it is so map focused. Bob says I came up with an inn, the Magpie's Nook, which has a policy: leave a trinket, take a trinket. Oh, I like that. I like magpies. The inn returns anything that is claimed as stolen, but claims no responsibility for what is left. That's cute. I like that a lot. So over on the left side of the city, we have all of our, or most of our generic locations. These are the places where if the player's like, I want to go to a tavern, I want to go to the library, I want to go and buy this relatively unimportant thing. Then we also have this walled off section for the Legate's Manor. And then I went around and started looking at some of the specific elements of the map. You can see that this city is walled off, but inside there is some kind of farmland, so I thought it would make sense that they would have like a lot of grain stores, that this city would be fairly self-reliant. And because it is so far removed from the center of the empire, I like the idea that over time the legate has really started to focus on, well, eventually maybe we'll want to secede, so let's start preparing that and start getting self-sufficient and start building out some of those little plot details. And then have the kind of secret police offices. That's not something the players will probably interact with, but I like to know it's there. Then up in the right hand area, we have an arena. Always love an arena. Players always need somewhere to go to fight some monsters, fight some creatures, and earn some glory. If anything keeps them in the city, it'll probably be that, because it usually is. But then one thing that I wanted to do was play with a religious faction in the city. So one of the defining features of the Empire is that they're not a particularly religious nation. So their kind of stance is that they are accepting of religions, but no religion can be placed higher than the Empire itself. So in this case, at the moment, the Empire is run by the Lady of Dusk. So their position is no god can be considered higher in a kind of legal sense and like nationwide sense than the Lady of Dusk. So they don't have state religions. They don't have a unified church or anything like that. It's much more splintered and small. And I like the idea of introducing a new religious faction here. So at the end of our last kind of leg of campaign, we had a TPK where the players were killed by an Akmiri who wanted to become the Golden God. And in the years of time jump between that TPK and now, that Akmiri has started to kind of gain a religious following and has started to be worshipped as a deity by some people. And I like the idea of, just as some background set dressing in this location, having a temple to his golden radiance, to the golden god within this city, so that if they do interact with it, they would see the result of that kind of previous TPK and see the effect that that's had on the world. Same with this location directly opposite. For another faction, there's a faction called the Watchers, who are kind of monster hunters specifically devoted to extra planar threats. And I like the idea that there is this group who have been on the lookout for threats from beyond the material plane, and they've noticed this new god and are like, that is fishy. So they've basically set up a little sting operation directly opposite the church and are watching that. And that whole thing, probably not something the players are going to interact with. So when we click on it, there's almost no information in these pins, but there's enough context there that if they start to pull at any of those threads, I can quickly use all of those context clues to start laying the track in front of the train and putting together some form of adventure for them, some form of plot, that kind of thing. And then in terms of other places that they might go, there is an astrological divination school, the Arcane School of Astrological Divination, stargazers built into this huge observatory in the mountains. And they might go there just because it's such an enormous feature of the map. Like, it's a massive gold building. So they might look at it and go, what is it? I want to know. If they do, that's fine. I don't have anything immediately planned for that beyond its name, but that's the kind of thing where I would tell them their name and wait to hear what they would plan with each other. So a lot of the time, what will happen when they see a map and start planning or asking questions is they'll ask, what is X place? And I'll give them the name, and then someone will say, we should go there because, and then they'll start discussing the reasons for why they might go there. And then I can use those reasons to be like, right, okay, now I know what kind of plot or adventure we have happening there because I know what you're hoping to get out of it. So a lot of the time I will place icons down on the map or places down, and I have absolutely no idea what's going on there, and I'm relying on the players are gonna tell me without telling me what is there, because I'll just listen and figure out what they're en route. It's part of why, if we jump over to my adventures, or go over to the templates actually. In my adventure template, it's why I have these boxes for questions at the end of each session. So when I ask at the end of the session, what is your next goal? At the end of every session, I ask them, what is the plan for next week? What are you planning on doing? What are your next goals? That's part of why, so that I get a sense of where they're intending to go, so I can kind of prep the things that they're going to be looking at. Because part of my entire approach when it comes to running for this group specifically is, might have a map that's got a lot of pins on it. Granted, this is a lot fewer pins than it used to have, but a big part of it is we get a really high level, broad idea of what's in a lot of places, but we only ever really drill down and make detail as the player is looking at it. I always think of it as like video game rendering, how the engine just doesn't render most things until you point the camera at it. And that's how I like to approach world building. We like load in low poly versions of the world, which is what most of these pins are, you know, very little information. They're the low poly versions. And then when the player looks at it, that's when we go in and add all the extra information and make the HD version. So the main thing that I need to do in terms of prepping for this next location is get a sense of kind of the flow of what the session would be and some sort of touch points for the session itself. So if we jump into adventures here, so this would be adventure. So it'll be 17, they'll fight the Gorgon, and then 18, they would go adventure 18, Last Watch. So we're leapfrogging a week, but that's fine because the Gorgon is mostly done. So summary is they arrive in Last Watch to find more information about the crash Dakmiri skyship in Asher Sullivan's relics. In Sullivan's relics. So the main thing is, how are they arriving? If they're arriving by foot, they're going to arrive through this gate and go through the like generic quarter where they've got all of the buildings, the generic shops and stuff. So they'll arrive through this gateway, past all the farm fields, into the city itself, past the market bazaar, past the library. They might go, oh, I wonder whether there's anything in the library. So we'll make a note of may go to the library. And from there, they'd look up and they'd see the raised hill, the raised walled hill of the Legate's manor and his kind of like little private area. They'd walk through this kind of like ceremonial area here. They'd see the Dwarven Enclave on their left. So this region has a silver mine up in the mountains, and it is worked by an enclave of dwarves. That might be something that gets noted. So what did we find or learn? Could be a dwarf enclave works the silver mine. And I've put that in square brackets just to note to myself that this isn't actually known knowledge. This is knowledge that they can find out. They'd carry on through. They might notice the grain, but that's probably not something they're going to care about. They'd cross over. It'd carry on through, and the auction house would be among the first thing they'd see, but they might want to go to the Arcane Observatory. So they want to go to the Arcane School of Astrological Divination. I don't know why they would want to go there, but it is the kind of place that at least one of them is going to be like, ooh, big and shiny, let's have a look. And the main reason that I want to make a note of where it is they might go is so that when I get closer to the time, I know I need to prepare at least 1 to 2 NPCs in this location for them to interact with. And usually that takes the form of an unnamed NPC greeter. If it's a large place like a library or some kind of school, they'll have some kind of unnamed greeter that they can arrive and speak to and be like, oh, what is this place? I want a bit more information. And then unnamed NPC that can give them lore dumps or introduce them to things, someone that they could return to see in that location. So already as we go through this, I'm like, right, okay, I'm going to need a librarian NPC. I'm going to need a named NPC for the divination school. I already have my named NPC for Sullivan's relics. It's Sullivan. And then if they end up in the Temple of his Golden Radiance, I wouldn't want to be caught out. So we will make a note that they may end up there, but I doubt they will. In the Temple of his Golden Radiance. And then beyond that, if they came by sea, they'd arrive in the dockyards. And they'd speak to... may arrive by dockyards. And then I'll make a note to myself of some kind of dockyard worker NPC to interact with. If they arrive by the dockyards, I wouldn't need a named NPC for them to speak to. This would just be a passing interaction, just someone to point them in the direction that they need to go. And that's one of the ways that I like to think about interactions and about how the players are gonna interact with the world. Is it a named NPC that they're going to speak to multiple times? If it is, then I'm going to think about it a lot more, because I'm going to probably want to find or make a token for that NPC, because they like to see the people that they're speaking to. I'm going to want to think about accents and mannerisms a lot more, because if it's something that I'm going to have to repeat, I'm going to want to make sure that it's something that I can do consistently, or something that isn't so ridiculous that it takes us all out of the moment every single time. Like, whereas if it's an NPC they're only going to meet the one time, sometimes the best way to make an NPC that's only being met once super memorable is to be completely ridiculous. You know, like, I might do a completely outlandish accent or mannerism or kind of voicing for an NPC if I know they're never going to meet them again, because it will make an immediate, sticking, lasting impression more so than just a standard voice. You do run the risk of them latching onto an NPC when you do that, though, and then being like, I love this guy. This guy's ridiculous. I want more of this guy. And it can be hard to tell when they're going to do that. I introduced them to a robot butler that sounded like Matt Berry in the last session, which I really thought they were going to vibe with. They didn't care. I was a little bit devastated because it was right up their alley. Like, he was this super elaborate clockwork warforged. Sounded like Matt Berry. It was exactly the kind of character that usually at least a couple of them are like, I want more of this in my life. But for whatever reason, they were just like, eh. So that kind of character, you've got to be careful not to invest too much time to like prep, because it can just be wasted. And then you get the levels of NPCs where you know that they're not going to ever meet them again, that that NPC there exists just to deliver a single piece of transient information, or they exist to die. And those NPCs, I very rarely give either any voice or like distinct voice. I've got a couple of like go-to accents or voicings that I'll default to for like if I want them to just sound dumb as bricks, or if I want them to sound like a brutish thug, or you know, that kind of thing. But for those one time, never intended to be seen again, never intended to have a name NPCs, don't really worry about them. That is very much just an improv style of interaction, which I think is what the Dockyard's approach would be. If they arrive by sea, anyone they speak to will be an improved NPC, whereas if they come in by land, there's many more places along the way to their destination that they could go, ooh, what's that? Ooh, what's that? Ooh, what's that? And kind of get pulled off course. Then when they get to Sullivan's Relics, they're going to arrive and they're going to be like, we heard you've got a piece of sky ship. Can we see it? And then it's either going to be a yes, and cool, they're going to go see it and everything will be fine. It's much more likely going to be a no. And then they're either going to have some kind of negotiation or do some kind of heist. And I think I'm reluctant to do a heist because they have, in what feels like fairly recent, done a kind of auction house relic heist within the last like year or so, which by our kind of timescale feels very recent. So I don't think that they'll want to heist it. I think that it will be more of a back and forth discussion or some form of violence. I don't think that Asher Sullivan is the kind to just fight them on the spot. So it would be more of a, you scratch my back, I scratch yours. You do this job for me, I'll let you have a look around my fancy crashed piece of skyship. So if we go there and have a look, and then make a note that Asher Sullivan will want them to do a job in exchange for looking around piece of skyship. And that job is probably going to be the retrieval of some kind of relic, which means that we have to have a look at the wider map and see if we've got any relics marked down. We do have a couple of, what's the Well of Many Worlds? Let's have a look at you. It's a D&D Beyond thing. It is a DMG thing. It's Fine black cloth, soft as silk, folded to the dimensions of a handkerchief, unfolds into a circular sheet 6 feet in diameter. Place it on a slab so wherever it forms to a dimensional 6-foot portal, so it goes to another plane of existence. That is cool. I like that a lot. I kind of want the players to have that, and not an NPC. Someone's using it to plane top. So you can see that on the wider map, I've already made a note on this item that someone is using it to plane top, to indicate to myself that there is some kind of plot hook there involving that item. But I'm not necessarily saying that we need to go for the Well of Many Worlds, because that is a pretty spicy item and they are very low level at the moment. That's a legendary item. They are still only level 4, so it's probably too powerful for them. But we probably do want them to have something. And the easiest way to figure out what is to figure out what the item would be. Yeah, that's the problem. The players would want to keep it. I'd want to keep it. You know, just go to a different plane of existence and all of your problems are solved. Which means that the way to figure out what does Asher Sullivan want is we go and have a look at magic items, because they are level 4. So really speaking, we want to be looking at maybe uncommon, rare, push. Welcome, Anto my king. We want to be looking at uncommon or rare items at a push. And given that this guy's a relic stealer, I think we start with relics, right? It seems reasonable. So uncommon relics. That is a horrific name to try and pronounce, and it's just a jar of ointment. So I don't like that. No. A bunch of different armors, potions. It's gonna have to be rare, isn't it? So a bunch of elemental stuff, ion stones. Ion stones are cool. Necklace of prayer beads. It's too religious, I think. Rings are always pretty cool. A ring of spell storing could be nice. A ring of spell storing that has a specific spell stored in it could be very spicy. That's a contender, actually. Let's make a note. Ring of spell storing with very specific spell. I don't know what the spell is. I don't know what it would do. I don't know why Sullivan would want it, but that's the kind of esoteric, weird, kind of elusive thing that I like the idea of. You know, they find this ring. This ring's got a spell in it. The spell is like weird and kooky and does something really cool and takes the campaign in a direction that none of us saw coming. It's exactly my jam. And then spell scrolls, maybe, I guess. And then wands and staffs is fine. Horn of Valhalla would be on my list if it wasn't an item that they themselves have had in the very recent past, prior to our last TPK. So we're in that weird space where, because they TPK'd fairly recently, there's a lot of kind of, I'm still in that phase of making sure not to retread too much stuff too soon, which makes giving them items like as rewards a real pain in the ass. And this isn't necessarily an item that they're going to get as a reward. It's just something interesting that they can go, oh, it makes sense that this relic hunter would want this thing. This is a worthwhile thing for us to go and fetch quest as part of whatever we're going to go and do to get access to this crashed skyship. Because the real juice of that interaction would be they then have to go somewhere dangerous, fight some dangerous monster, their reward would be in the loot of the dangerous monster. They would get stuff for themselves, and they'd also bring back this relic that the dude wanted, that Sullivan wanted. So far, some weird esoteric spell stored ring is a very strong contender. Elsewise, let's have a look at rare arcana items. Yeah, the rare arcana items are where it's at. There's so many of them. And so many of them are so good. Cube of Summoning. A merry tune emits from the box lid, pops up, and a creature pops out. Dern's Instant Fortress. I do think Dern's Instant Fortress might actually be on the map. I've got a feeling that there is an Instant Fortress somewhere. Problem is, I don't want to send them on too wild a goose chase, because I don't want them wandering the world for weeks and months at a time, because they're on a fairly time-sensitive thing. Like, they want to get this done before the Elder Brain has a chance to flee Visoka, so they might still have a chance to, stop a Mindflayer Uprising. So whatever they're doing needs to be fairly localized to Last Watch and fairly achievable in a shortish, span of time. Which will likely mean they're going to have to delve into the mountains. And there is a moon dragon in there, and that could be a interesting excuse to go into the dragon lore and see what moon dragons do. So if we jump into the compendium and races and the dragons of Ishtar, and have a look at moon dragons and see what moon dragons do, because I can't remember. They do radiant damage, they feed on moonlight, they live in mountaintop peaks and in caves, they only come out at night, they have long serpentine bodies and no wings like Halung Chinese style dragons. So radiant dragon feeds on moonlight. Interacting with some kind of like young or adolescent moon dragon and trying to recover this magic ring from them could be an interesting thing. They're probably... Possibly, yeah. So possibly steal it from a moon dragon. So one of the characters in the party is currently a dragon-themed sorcerer. So they're a draconic sorcerer, and they are a Goliath who they're a thunderstorm Goliath, but they believe they got their powers from a dragon. So they've got like delusions of grandeur that they are like a dragon, and it would be very interesting for them to interact with another dragon, because that's not something they've done yet in this campaign. And if it seems like they're not going to stay or return to this location, if I get the vibe from them that Last Watch is just going to be a kind of flyover stop, that they're just here for this quest and move on forever, then I will probably have whatever Sullivan wants be from the Moon Dragon. So he'll be like, whether it's this ring or whatever it is, like, I'll let you look inside my piece of crashed skyship if you go and get this thing from the Moon Dragon from me. And then you're asking a very good question, Bob, that if they're trying to trade with the Moon Dragon, what does the Moon Dragon want? Hesitant to go down too many tradey rabbit holes, because they're already in a situation where they're like trading with one guy to go and get a thing. If they're also then trading with that creature to go and get a thing, we then end up like 3 levels deep of fetch questing, where they're fetching a thing for the dragon, to fetch a thing for Sullivan, to fetch a thing for him to go and so that they can go in the crashed skyship. And even that is just so they can go back to their original city. So wherever they end up for Sullivan, ideally I do want it to be a fight. Like, yeah, sure, they can talk their way out if they want. They always have that option. but I'm pretty sure it'll be a fight. Or the deck will be stacked so that it's much more likely to be a fight than not, which isn't hard to do, honestly. If I don't open up a dialogue, they will fight it because their default is to fight things. One player will try and talk to things, but as long as that player isn't at the front of the group, then if I don't speak, it's a fight. So it's not terrifically hard to like just finger on the scale to weigh it in my favor for it to be a fight in that sense. Just because I don't want that cascade of fetch quests. Because at some point you'd get to the stage where someone will be like, wait, what are we doing? Who are we getting this for? I thought we were here for this purpose. But if they're not going to stay in Last Watch and not going to interact with Last Watch in a meaningful long-term way and not going to come back here, it would be nice to have them interact with the Moon Dragon because the Moon Dragon's there. My players will default to a fight even if I hint at a map. Yeah, a lot of players do. I will tend to put maps in front of my players as much as possible, even when there is no fight, just to try and train their brains to be like, map does not equal fight. So wherever possible, I will try and give them some visual cue, ideally a map if I have it, even if I know there's not going to be a fight, just so that they can visualize the space. Because one of my players, I'm certain, has aphantasia, so can't mentally visualize things in that way. But also so that when they see the map go down, they're not immediately in like fight mode. And sometimes, if it's a recurring location, it can be very useful to be like, hey, you're used to this place, you've been here 2 or 3 times, you've seen it 2 or 3 times before they actually have a fight in that place. So let's have a look at the Ring of Spell Storing and see. You can bring 5 levels worth of spells at a time. So what level 5 spells could be interesting to have? Let's have a look at the spells and see what kind of spell Sullivan would want. So for this, I want stuff from the new books. I don't want any 2014 stuff. This one, Astarion, Netheril, Lorwyn, and Faerun. And then up to spell level 5. Same with my players. I'm setting a trap. A young dragon wants to know why players are at location. Lets them stay for a story, then depending on their action, depends on what the adult dragon does. Yeah, I like the players not being forced to fight. Like, I never want to force the players to fight, but I know in my heart of hearts, most of the time it will be a fight. Or if it is, a lot of the times when it's not a fight, I'm as surprised as the players. Oh, a moon cloak for the duration. Moonlight fills half gather, resistance to cold, lightning, radiant damage. Cast one of the spells, ending the spell immediately. Fills. That's an option because it's a moon themed thing. While the spell lasts, you can use one of the following options, ending the spell immediately. Fail a saving throw to avoid or end the frightened, grappled, or restrained condition. Use your action to succeed. Or as a magic action, you're an ally in the area, regain hit points equal to 4d10 plus your spellcasting ability modifier. That seems a cool moon-themed thing that might be nice to have stored in a ring, maybe. Anti-life shell, pretty cool. Being in a fight and just popping up a force field that stops creatures other than constructs or undead from passing through or reaching it. That's very cool. That's definitely an option. I think Cloudkill is not the one. Circle of Power, no. But Commune, to contact a deity or a divine proxy and ask up to 3 questions. That is spicy. Because who knows what the deity spell is? And I like that a lot. Commune can go on the list. Or commune, not commune. Yeah, I like that a lot. What about Dream? Not as thrilled with that for stored ring spell. Modify Memory. Modify Memory is such a good spell, but I don't know why he'd want to. Why would he want to modify someone's memory? And why would he want? Not just why would he need the ring for it? You know, that's the thing. Like, it needs to be something he needs the ring for. Like the Mooncloak is cool because wearing the ring lets him wear the protective spell, so that makes sense. Anti-life shell, the same, wearing the ring, wearing the protective spell. But I think Commune might actually be my favorite because it is a ring that just lets him contact a deity, and who knows what deity he wants to contact or why or any of that nonsense. Excuse me, but that's interesting and spicy. So, Asher Sullivan will allow them to go and poke around in the piece of crashed skyship on the condition that they bring to him the ring of spell storing that is in the lair of the Moondragon. That spell storing ring has the commune spell in it that would allow him to make contact with some kind of divine entity. I'll figure out who that divine entity is in the future. And then the Moondragon lives in a Moondragon's lair, which is built into the mountain above Lastwatch, which they would have to access by going into the silver mine. Maybe we could have some mine-based monsters, kind of soften the players up on the approach to the dragon. And then a Moondragon's lair where they interact with the dragon, maybe either solve some riddles, speak to it, or fight it for the ring. Get the ring, take it back to Sullivan. He lets them inside this piece of skyship. They get the information they need, and the psionic detector. That's the main thing that they're going to get from this. The psionic detector. And then it will be Moondragon, Asher Sullivan, and anyone else that we need. So, librarian. And astrologist. And maybe dockyard worker. So that gives us a rough kind of idea of where they're going and what they're doing. Everything else I will figure out closer to the time. As I said, they have one more session to go between here and now, because they are going to be going and fighting a Gorgon and getting a map of the Ender City before then. And who knows, they could die to the Gorgon. It's exactly the kind of adventure that would TPK them. It's got no immediate bearing on the main plot, really, and it is just going to be a straight up normal monster fight, so it's primed to be the kind of thing that will kill them, and maybe none of this will even matter, but that's always the risk. But I think I'm going to call it there because my brain is turning into soup. I don't know what buttons I have to press to tell you about things this evening. Oh yeah, no, I do. I have a Kickstarter that is coming soon, next month, for a set of cheat sheets for the revised 5e for D&D 24. So cheat sheets for all 12 classes in that to help learn and play those easier. That's going to be launching next month sometime. Depends on my health and when I can get the necessary bits in place to launch it. I'm hoping for 2 weeks today. It's like the 10th. It'll either be the 10th or the 17th. But you can go and sign up to get notified when that goes live. And then I'm hoping, again, touch wood, spoons permitting, to stream again on Sunday. And ideally make Sunday my kind of go-to day if I can. Just because it's a nice chill evening. Most folks are off work. So it's an ideal streaming day. But we'll see how it goes. But I have been Ante. This has been the first stream of the year. It's always a little rough getting back into it. But I appreciate you being here and joining in for the fun. And I shall see you next time. Happy gaming.